Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 89. He's Dave Ryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Dave, how you doing?
Happy, what is it, Thursday, and we're pretending like it's Friday, I guess.
I didn't want to say the day. I lose track.
It is, beautiful day here in Vegas today. Really has. You wouldn't even known it had been as cold as it has been lately. But obviously it's that magical time of year. It's NFL Combine time, and I just was thinking back today, man, it really is something how this NFL calendar works and all. I mean, it really is. There is no off time, for us for the most part during the NFL season. I think the slowest amount of time that we ever had is that period, that 4 weeks after the OTAs and all wrap up until after the final mandatory mini camp up until the start of training camp there. I mean, they really do a good job of stretching all these dates out, and it really seems like there's always something to talk about. And of course, Kevin Colbert was at the spoke at the Combine like we told the folks he would do on Wednesday, and we got a lot to talk about stemming from that as well.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into it. Colbert, had several media interviews, but I guess the biggest Colbert-related topic to address off the top is we're now hearing some of the first stuff, maybe not the first stuff, but some of the things from Antonio Brown. I think he's got a big feature piece with, I believe, was it Jeff Darlington of ESPN that's coming out. He's going to be on LeBron James show, I think, for March 1st, so today for you guys that are listening. But the biggest thing I saw was Brown kind of capitalizing on the quote-unquote controversy, and I think it's a very dumb controversy, and I think you agree, Dave, but the kids comment that Colbert made talking about Ben Roethlisberger and the 52 kids on the roster, and Brown took issue with that and kind of used that and championed it as the evidence that of why he's so frustrated with being a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, and I've even seen, I think, one writer from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, I think one of their interns or bloggers or whatnot, kind of framed this as in Kevin Colbert fell right into Antonio Brown's trap. Like Antonio Brown would know how to set a trap on this. But
leave the blogging to us.
Yeah, it really does. It really does feel like a kind of a gotcha moment here, but Darlington, look, I think Jeff Darlington does a great job at interviews. He's always usually real level-headed and all like that, so I'm interested to see how the rest of this turns out, and I think they're going to show it to us on Saturday at some point, and that means obviously we'll have to write about it, or Matthew will have to write about it, depending on what part of the day that it comes out there. But Kevin Colbert had his 52 kids comment. Ever since then, I think now it's been about 2 or 3 times at least he's tried to clarify the context of that. And during the interview with Darlington, between Darlington and AB, AB kind of points to it as evidence, saying, hey, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Of course, he tried to clarify because, he started the truth. He stated the truth, and he's going to backpedal on his words. But what grown man is calling another grown man a kid? 52 kids, like you don't have no respect for these guys. Like these are the guys that go to work for you, and that's what I'm telling you guys. That's my issue. You know what I'm saying? It's all about respect. He continues, things are not getting better. They're not changing. You know what I mean? He just stated it. There's 52 kids, and it's this guy, meaning Roethlisberger. Bro, it's one team. So that's what it is, man. Just understanding truths. Well, if it is one team, then why was Antonio staying off campus at Latrobe when the rest of his teammates were in the dorm rooms? So look, I mean, I don't know what he's trying to accomplish at this point, other than trying to justify his actions stemming all the way back from week 17 of the season. He wants to get traded. He's getting traded, or that's going to be the attempt here. Let it go, man. I mean, I don't understand the rest of this, but look, I mean, it'll be interesting to hear what else he has to tell Darlington in the rest of this interview.
Let it go doesn't seem to be in AB's playbook right now for this offseason, at least. Yeah, I mean, it's a better question rather than just, why did he not stay in the dorms? Why did he leave the team in week 17 if you're supposed to be a team and together and no one's above someone else? Why do you get to bail on the team and then try to come back on Sunday after not practicing, not talking to the team, not going for your MRI and think that you can just come in and play? So I know we disagreed slightly on some of the comments that Colbert made about Ben and kind of just, again, the Ben above reproach idea. But yeah, as I even said on the podcast at the time, the kid's comment was the low hanging fruit, the dumbest stuff to try to comment on and try to nitpick. He's Kevin Colbert. He's 62 years old. He's an old guy. They call him kids. As you mentioned in that same interview with the media, he called Matt McCrane a kid. I'm sure he called Josh Dobbs a kid, whenever they drafted him. That's just the lexicon. It's not supposed to be a slight. I'm sure Cam Hayward, Mo Foster, Rosie Nix, Jordan Dangerfield aren't upset at the 52 kids comment. So I think Brown is just really capitalizing on that moment to try to justify his frustration.
Well, looking for a reason to have the feelings hurt here, Yeah. Now, look, I mean, this is blown up so much. It'll be interesting to see, when, guys like Ramon Foster and Pouncey and Hayward and all like that. I mean, if you really, to me, it was just such a generality that it's Roethlisberger and 52 kids, meaning normally you're going to have, the way I took it is the way I explained it the other day. I just took it as Kevin Colbert saying it's going to be Roethlisberger and 52 younger players than him on the roster, and a lot of times on most roster, all that's kids. And if Kevin Colbert would have had a roster sheet with him, he could have went down and checked off who's kids and who's not kids in his eyes, and maybe that. Look, what was it? The best choice of analogies in all of this, unquestioned leader and 52 kids? Maybe not, especially with the situation when you have a guy like Antonio Brown just looking to maybe nitpick you here. But overall, I still don't view that comment is worth all people getting worked up the way they are about it. But look, anytime they see something, they think they can get clicks, get listeners, get viewers out of it, they're going to do it. And Colbert's had to try to contextualize this 3 or 4 times just this past week.
He needs a Dave Bryan contextualization post, maybe, to help him out.
I don't even think that would do him any good.
No,
not on my end.
Like you said, it's kind of vulture circling right now, especially for a very mild-mannered, generally uncontroversial Kevin Colbert, who's never really said anything that's garnered a headline in his life. That's just the approach and the MO that he takes. Colbert said the kids thing because, A, Ben is the oldest player on the team, and B, he was referencing Super Bowl rings. Ben is the only player on the roster with a Super Bowl ring, so that's why he separated it the way that he did. Like I said, there were things I didn't like what Colbert said in that interview, to looking at the big ideas, not the particular language. And as I said all along, I think that there are probably valid frustrations and things that anger Antonio Brown that I can understand. I said this before. I felt like, to my best knowledge, which only goes so far, AB was so frustrated because he felt like he didn't have a voice in that room, that he didn't have the level of respect that he thought he should have, and that everyone sided with Big Ben. And I think there is some level of truth to that, but A, to jump on these comments is just silly. It's just, that's not the hill to die on. And B, you have to go about it the right way. You can be frustrated and not like the situation, and that's fine. That can be valid, but how do you handle that? And basically everything AB's done, outside of maybe posting the photo with Art Rooney II when they met, has just been the wrong way to go about it, at least in my opinion.
How do you feel about that photo? I was glad to see. I don't remember if we talked about it or not. I didn't mind it. If anything, I thought maybe it kind of helped things, and at least give the appearance of kumbaya and all like that. And for the most part, really, since that meeting took place, AB has been quiet, on social media. Now all of a sudden, he's making up for it with his interview with Darlington, and then of course whatever we look forward to him saying on this what is it, what do they call that show, the barbershop or
something barbershop, LeBron James show on HBO,
right?
Whatever.
And I got to admit, I've never watched that show. I don't know if you have, but obviously I'll have to be tuning it in now because of AB going to be on it. But look, two more weeks of this, and maybe a tad bit more. I think both sides probably at this point, And look, Kevin Colbert has still been very complimentary, right, of AB, even this past week alone. And yeah, why wouldn't he be? I mean, you don't want to. I mean, you got a piece of merchandise up on the shelf with a heck of a price tag on it. You're definitely not going to throw pebbles at that fine vase, right? So
Sure, Pebbles at that fine vase. Just a casual saying. I totally get it.
Right. But I mean, you get what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna take a risk of chipping it or anything and try or decreasing the value, and that's the way I kind of look at this. And yeah, has there been a lot of coach speak / GM speak? Yeah. We don't usually get straight answers anyway out of Colbert. Now, occasionally this time of year, if you parse his quotes pretty good, he's usually good at providing clues for you. Look at last year with the whole quarterback stuff. I was able to grasp onto that and ended up being right on that. But I think he's done his best talking about Colbert, and right now I bet at this point right now he's glad all of his media interviews are over with, and really I think the next time we'll probably hear from him is during the draft, right?
Yeah, would that be right before the draft? I think a couple days before Tim and Tomlin talk about kind of previewing the draft, right?
Right. Now I don't know how much he normally gets. Maybe I don't know down at the owners' meetings there later on in March how much he. I know that's when we hear the most from Tomlin because they have the AFC door, the AFC breakfast, and then Missy usually gets a hold of it. I know Tomlin usually does an interview or two down there. I can't remember. Even if Colbert does speak, it's not going to be much, and it's probably going to be a full month from now anyway. And then by then, all this other stuff's probably going to be done and over with when it comes to Antonio Brown. But yeah, I bet he's glad at this point. I mean, look, nothing else Kevin Colbert says or does at this point is going to change any of the narratives out there at this point.
Yeah, I think we've heard enough from Kevin Colbert. I think he's done a dozen interviews already, and it's getting to the point where you're just hearing the same thing. And until something changes with the roster, with free agency, the draft, the future of Antonio Brown, there's literally nothing more to say. Now, I know Colbert kind of hinted at, the trade could happen before the draft, after the draft. He even said, June, July, we're not going to put a timetable on it. But I know that Colbert also made a comment basically hinting at, we're going to trade AB before that roster bonus kicks in. I know that's not a for sure, but it's pretty close to it, at least in my mind.
Yeah, when you look at that one quote from...
Do you have that pulled up?
I can.
I can paraphrase it.
If you buy me some time here, but it was something to the line of... I don't have it exactly.
Well, you pull it up, but pull it up, Dave. Basically, what Colbert said was, you kind of hedged a little bit on, trade him before the roster bonus or not. But he basically said, if you're keeping him and then you pay the roster bonus, odds are he's going to stay on your roster. And that's why I'm thinking, okay, they're really going to make a push coming out of the combine before the March 17th roster bonus is due.
Yeah, and in so many words, let's see if I can find it here. Exactly where it was. They asked him, how much significance is there if he is given the roster bonus and all like that? He says no. What significance? Because significant players, the March 17th part of the equation with him for a decision, and this was on Moving the Chains on Sirius XM NFL Radio. Which, by the way, I don't know why any of you listening to this podcast, why you wouldn't have Sirius subscription. And look, that's an unsolicited on my part. I'd love to have Sirius as an advertiser of this podcast, but I've been a Sirius subscriber for years, and not only for their football shows, but because of their music as well too. But anyway, enough with that. He goes on to say, our decision at that point, he is due a roster bonus. But if you decide to pay that roster bonus, chances are that player's probably staying with you. So you can move things and do different things. Yes, but again, and Drew, and that's Drew Rosenhaus. Drew's been great. We've been open and honest with each other. We both understand that this might be best for everybody, and we'll go about it in a very positive manner. And if it works for both sides and our side, beautiful. If it doesn't, it has to benefit us.
Yeah. So, what is your feeling? Is that the hint that it's going to happen before the roster bonus?
Well, I obviously I think they would like that to happen.
Sure.
That was kind of unsolicited though by him to say. They were just asking him if it's part of the equation, and he offers up the fact that if you decide to pay that roster bonus, chances are the player's probably staying with you. So that part of the quote was kind of unsolicited and kind of took me a little bit by surprise. So I don't know how much we should read into that, but it goes without saying. I mean, you don't want to continue to throw good money or however it's saying, good money after bad or whatnot in this situation. You got a guy that you're planning on parting ways with. You'd like to do it before you give another $2.5 million and smack him on the ass as he walks out the door. Yeah, to me, that's a heck of a damn present right there, right? Yeah. Get the F out of here. Here's your money. That kind of thing. But and look, I mean, let's be serious here. What realistic? I get the whole posturing thing and leverage thing, but I mean, realistically, after this combine's over, you're going to have another week to evaluate some things right before you get into the start of free agency and all like that. How much is going to change between what teams' best offers might be from, say, 2 weeks from now until the start of the NFL draft?
Yeah, not much. And that's why I think really the best time and the most likely time to trade him is shortly after the combine. Because after the combine, any team that has any interest in AB is going to express it. They're not going to hold back. What's the point of waiting? If you want to jump on it at least early in case you do want to move him and that team can stay involved. So this is the time to do it.
Right, and people saying, well, the teams will hold off and see if the Steelers pay that roster bonus so they get a little bit more urge. I don't view all that. I mean, if you, I think your best offer, and I understand Kevin Colbert, and I don't know if I totally believe him, and we'll get into some of the things that he said here, saying, well, there's a little bit more interest since the last time we talked, and I do believe from the fact that he does that the posturing aspect of, we're if it's not beneficial for the Steelers, we're not going to do it. But I mean, that all looks good on a quote sheet and all like that. But he's going to end up having to take his best offer, whatever that best offer might be. And boy, can you imagine if it's only a third round pick? Exactly what they got for Martavis Bryant. Now, I think odds are probably good. It might be a little bit more than that. But if that's the best, he might have to roll with that because, I mean, how at this point now, and I know he says, look, if we're going to do what's beneficial for us, and, if it doesn't work out, well, we'll have to move forward with AB on a team. How in the hell do you integrate AB back into this team at this point with all that's been said? Let's assume that you don't trade him, and you want, you end up having to carry him back. How in the heck do you do that?
No idea. I mean, it'd be so tough to do. I guess it's possible. I know Colbert's left that door open, but I think he just kind of has to, at least publicly, to give him some sort of leverage here. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you're a team, you're going to jump in after the combine to show some level of interest. So when that 17th deadline comes, you can be at least in that mix and make sure Colbert's returning your phone call. But that's a good segue because and we'll get back to Colbert kind of in a second here, but every other team basically has been asked about Antonio Brown, and we've had several teams, at least publicly, say they haven't shown interest in Brown. Now that may change. They may be lying. All those things are worthy of context here. But I know what the 49ers have said, that they haven't reached out, which this is the team probably most often linked to Antonio Brown is John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They've said no. And then was it the Buccaneers, which really isn't a surprise to us. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. They've flatly denied any interest, and other teams have been very cagey with their answer, which really is no surprise.
Right. I mean, you don't expect them to stick their hand up and say, yeah, you caught us. We're one of the three teams that called Kevin Colbert guilty.
We're playing Blue's Clues over here again. I'm trying to put it together. I'm trying to figure it out.
Right. And look, I am too. And I wrote that big piece on the odds and all like that. And last night, Wednesday night, I answered a lot of questions on Twitter patiently about it, which I thought that was a good job by me.
I'm going to give the clap for it. Good job, Dave.
For the customer service part of
service with a smile. Steelers Depot.
The Steelers Depot customer service department, which but you get what I'm saying. I'm trying to logically break all this stuff down, and you and you and I have dedicated, some good conversations to it already, trying to go through the teams and saying which ones are the most likely. And I did have that post up earlier today with kind of the sound bites of these major GMs. And really, at this point, I still say maybe the Jets are a team that would be involved in this, still based on what Mike McKagan had said, and then John Gruden. He I thought he did a good job of kind of tap dancing around the question during his combine press conference. I don't think the Colts. We already talked about it. I just from what Ballard said and what Frank Reich said, and after the season was over and at the press conferences this week had come, I just don't see the Colts in there. I don't see the Broncos in there. Obviously the Buccaneers with Bruce Arians and Jason Light saying what he did. Don't see them in there. The 49ers, I've kind of stood by my thought all along that I just don't think John Lynch wants any of that mess. I mean, they could use a wide receiver, obviously, but if we were talking about a guy with a kind of a pristine, or not even a little less than pristine character here, it'd be one thing. But I mean, like it or not, Antonio's got some baggage here, and he still won't shut his mouth here. And I really think it's continuing maybe to hurt his value some. So, I think if you're going to get the team that most likely to give you a first, and I've said this for a while now, is the Raiders, because they have 3 of them. From there, I'm not convinced you're going to get a first from somebody unless there's some quick finagling that goes along with trading picks here. Because if they're wanting to do the deal here in the next 2 weeks, how much pre-draft trading will have happened where teams have shuffled picks by then? The answer is probably not much of any at this point. So we still hadn't heard a lot from the Lions, so I suppose that could be a possibility. I think I mentioned the Redskins the other day, just because, man, they got to do something over there. And the Raiders and the Jets, and I mean, I have a hard time struggling to come up with many teams over that. And when Kevin Colbert says 3, and maybe interest has increased since then, let's even say it's 5 teams. It can't be much more than that.
Well, you said 5 the other day. I said 5 to 7. That's probably what we're going to look at when this thing's said and done. Yeah, I think the difficult part with trying to get a first-round pick is because teams covet those first-round picks, right or wrong, and I think it's often wrong, but it's a fact. They covet those first-round picks because, at least from the coach perspective and the assistant and the coordinators, they're really just getting into this draft process. They haven't gone the whole way through it yet, so they haven't fleshed out totally who are the first rounders, how strong is this class. Obviously the scouts and stuff are farther ahead than maybe the head coach is. So they're probably more hesitant to part with that stuff because they're still trying to figure out what they want to do. And with free agency, you always have that first round pick in your back pocket saying, let's go in free agency. If we can't get this one guy or this one position, filled, we have our first round pick. So I think teams will be hesitant until you really hit that 17th deadline a couple days into free agency when teams have started to make some moves and the picture becomes a little bit clearer. So yeah, I think a first round pick is going to be tough. I think Oakland makes sense from that perspective, just considering they have 3 of them and kind of part with one easier than other teams. But yeah, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and I think in a Raiders' mind, I think, or at least in mine as well too, at least you can, if it did end up being a first from the Raiders, then you can in your head say, well, they just flipped Amari Cooper for Antonio Brown.
That's true. What's the lowest pick the Raiders have in the first round? Let me give the draft order pulled up.
Not right in front of me here, but it's like 27 or something, ain't it?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. I don't have the whole thing pulled up. I'll search it right now. I got 4, 24, and 27. Yeah, so you're looking probably to pick 27.
That's not bad to have another team's draft pick numbers memorized, right?
It's either really bad or really good.
I'm an old man too, So I mean that I can't tell you what I did with sock that I took off last night, but I'm pretty proud of myself there. See, when you're 50, you need these little pats on the back like this,
I'm going to remind you of that. I thought there were 2 interesting comments from when the GMs talked. It was John Dorsey. I don't expect AB to go to Cleveland. That'd be ludicrous. But Dorsey said, quote, I'm not going to talk about another team's players. But Kevin Colbert, if you're out there, here's my cell phone right here. Just pretty forthright. And then Mike Vrabel kind of went more vague and big picture, but he was talking about the personality. And you have the quote up on Steelers Depot. Vrabel says, "quote There's a lot of things that you can put up with as a coach and a team, and there's some things that you can't. I think that it's important that anytime you bring somebody from the outside." The organization, whether that be in free agency or where you trade for a player, you just have to make sure that you know and are comfortable with what you're getting. That's a tough part. And that's what teams are going to wrestle with. Now, I've said before, I think there'll be teams that can convince themselves that, yes, we can make AB work, the culture will fit, we got the right leaders, but there will be some teams that say, we're not touching that, we're not dealing with it, or at least at whatever price the Steelers want.
Yeah, and that's there. You have a lot packaged up in there. What's the buzzword been this offseason? It begins with a C.
Character?
No.
Oh. Capital? I don't know.
No.
I don't know what
culture.
Culture. Thank you for the Sesame Street lesson of the
day. Culture. Did you grow up watching the Electric Company any?
No, I think that was a little bit before me. I was definitely more Sesame Street kind of guy.
Okay, well, we had Sesame Street, back when the Earth was cooling.
And dinosaurs ran. You rode on T-Rex.
Yeah, we were dodging the dinosaurs. We had, obviously Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We had Sesame Street. We had the Electric Company. Could go on and on, but but culture has been the buzzword. It seems like for a little while, and I've heard it out of the mouths of quite a few of these coaches or GMs. Even just the last couple of days here. Now, look, we'll find out who was lying and who wasn't here pretty soon. But I don't think John Gruden's told a lie yet when it comes to this. I think he just kind of has danced around it so far. But keep your fingers crossed, kids.
Hey, where's that word again?
Maybe they end up getting a first out of this after all. But like I said, if they do get a first. Man, I can't see it coming from anybody but the Raiders.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it'll be tough to do, and let's just all root for it happening. All right, Dave, I think that's enough AB talk. Colbert had a lot more to say. I don't know where you want to go next. Do you have anything in mind, or I can lob something up to you? What do you want to do here?
Let's kind of go in order as some things kind of came out there,
What I'll go with next, at least, is Colbert talking about James Washington and just kind of reaffirming the faith, because obviously assuming that AB's gone, Juju's still there, they're going to likely bring somebody in, but the big X factor is what's going to happen with James Washington. He's got to step up, he's got to really take that sophomore jump the way that James Conner and TJ Watt and those guys have, and Colbert still was confident in Washington, liked the way that he finished the year. I think he said, Colbert said, quote, he had the big drop at Denver where he probably should have just run through the ball. He probably would have scored, but his confidence after that game grew to where he was a contributor down the stretch. So not uncommon for rookie players to go through that, but we had no question about James Washington's ability to catch the football, and now he's starting to show that. And I think he can take the jump. I like the way that he ended the season.
All right, so did Colbert just, as Heinz Ward say, throw the player onto the bus?
I don't know. I take no issue with that.
I mean, Ben Roethlisberger said he had to run through the ball and he needs to start making plays, and evidently that was a no-no, and Colbert pretty much said the same thing.
It was obvious. I mean, anyone who disagreed was
hey, you're supposed to do this behind closed doors, Alex.
Yeah. So, but
I mean, you get the craziness that I'm coming at. But look, I made sure to back up when I wrote this up. I made sure to back up what Colbert said about how he finished well, and he did. I mean, after you had that game against Denver, and then they sat him down that next week against the Chargers, inactive. That was the second game during the season he was inactive, and then he dressed the remaining 4 games after that, and he caught 8 passes for 140 yards in those 4 games, and then even had that long reception of 47 yards in the in the finale against Cincinnati Bengals, which certainly was I think that was good to get behind him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
get that first big deep ball behind him now, so you had that confidence. So yeah, he did rebound. Obviously, statistically, it wasn't a great season, and someone even got on me on the in the comments because I opened up the post saying, he had a very disappointing rookie season, but I don't know how else you can frame it other than saying it was a very disappointing rookie season. Because look, I'm not, and just because I say that, it doesn't mean I'm throwing him out with throwing the baby out with the bathwater here.
Yeah.
I mean, were there things that he definitely needs to improve on quickly? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I thought you could pencil this kid in for 35, at least 30 to 35 receptions last year
Yeah.
with
Me too.
with 3, 4, 5 deep balls and a touchdown or two, but that obviously didn't happen. So to not call his rookie season a disappointment, I think I think people need to take their glasses off a little bit there. Now, uh, yeah, I mean, I think there's reason to be optimistic here with him taking a step next year. Now, will it be disappointing if he doesn't crack that? I don't know what number to put on. We'll have to see the way the rest of the roster goes. But I mean, man, you would think this is a player that now should have 40, 50, 60 receptions in a second year.
Yeah, I'm not going to put a number on it now because we're too far out. I'm not even going to think about that kind of stuff. But obviously, you want to see that consistency. You want to see a guy just make that jump and show the hands that he showed at Oklahoma State, and I thought really showed at training camp. Ability to win jump balls, make contested grabs, great body control, making those difficult catches. That's what he has to do. So, will it happen for sure? Who knows? We'll see. But I know what I saw at training camp. We saw it in the preseason. We saw a little bit at the end of the regular season. He can do this. Will he? Again, totally unknown. But and to say that Washington had a tough rookie year, that's just the honest truth. Doesn't mean he can't get better. He will get better. But to say anything other than it being a disappointment is just a lie.
He was a better player coming out of college than what Marcus Wheaton was.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I have to go back and try to think. You got the better memory than I do over here. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, Wheaton wasn't a contested ball catcher like
nah.
that, and Wheaton, even though Wheaton had some big plays, he wasn't. He didn't run away from some people like the way Washington did. You
Well,
know.
I think Wheaton ran faster, but they were two different. They're two different body types, two different play styles. More interior guy for Wheaton, more vertical outside guy for Washington.
Right, but I mean, Washington did some. There were things on tape that made Washington look like a complete route runner too.
Sure.
So
Yeah, no, absolutely, and so yeah, you're right. He's got to step up next year, regardless of what happens, who else they bring in. But I thought it was well framed and an honest assessment from Kevin Colbert.
yes, I do too. But I mean, obviously, he's not going to say, "Well, we've lost all faith in James Washington." What
Yeah.
a bonehead pick on our part.
Hmm.
I mean, some of these things are Captain Obvious you expect, but I mean, the way he did frame it and all, I thought was proper.
Yeah. All right. To kind of look at free agency, Kevin Colbert asked a lot about pending free agents. I know they expressed interest in retaining L.J. Fort. I hope that they do. But I thought one interesting comment was sort of a hint and an implication that maybe Jesse James tests free agency and might not be that locked to come back that we hoped he would.
Right, and look, I mean, Jesse James. What Colbert used the word complimentary tight end. Is that right? When talking
Yep.
about him, that to me that's not a slight because that's exactly what he is. He's a complimentary tight end, and the team obviously did just re-sign Tyson Alualu. That leaves about 3 or 4, maybe 5 at most other players that are set to be unrestricted free agents that could demand a little bit more than the minimum, if you will,
Hmm.
to get re-signed. Obviously, the list of unrestricted free agents is a lot longer than that. But that list, now that the Lulu's off of it, includes Jesse James, or is headlined, I should say, by Jesse James, guard Ramon Foster, and cornerback Cody Sensabaugh. And whether or not you want to throw Anthony Chickalo in there or a guy like L.J. Fort, be my guest. But I mean, let's face it, those guys. Yeah, you'd like to get L.J. Fort back, but I mean, you're not going to. We're not talking about a Lualu contract here, even to get that done. Or at least it better not be
Hmm.
that kind of money. It should be basically it should be a 1 year a minimum salary benefit deal for both Chickalo and Fort, if you ask me. I would like to have Fort back, though. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Cody Sensabaugh, yeah. I mean, if you get him back for the price, for the right price, absolutely. I mean, after all, he was a guy that ended the season as a starter. Ramon Foster, we've talked about a ton. I mean, I think we'll see. Kevin Colbert's overall message was, if you think you can go out there and test the market and get yourself some more money, by all means, go out there and look around, But keep us in the loop just the same. His quote specifically when asked about Jesse was, Jesse's been a nice complimentary tight end to us. And then he goes on, any of our players that have an opportunity to maybe look elsewhere where they might have a better chance to be a starter, again, we encourage them. Go, look, find out. Keep us in the loop. If there's a way we can work it out, that's more beneficial for you to come back, great. And as I said, if a player has the opportunity to go out and see what's out there, he's usually more satisfied if he decides to come back. So, to me, and we obviously a lot can change in 2 weeks, it sounds like Jesse James, Ramon Foster, and Cody Sensabaugh, those guys that are not re-signed yet, are going to be given the opportunity to look around unless some of them come running up to the table real quick to get that what's out there on the table laying there for them to sign.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about Foster and Sensabaugh. I mean, obviously, I think they both could go or look, and that's certainly possible. But with James, I mean, do you think that a team's going to allow him to be a number one somewhere? There was a report, and you have that included in the article on Jesse James and Colbert's comments, that Tony Pauline was saying Jacksonville, Buffalo, two teams that are interested, and they're teams that don't require a dynamic player at tight end. They're a little bit more conventional and traditional with their offense. So I could see it as Jesse being a number one in places like that.
Oh, I wouldn't want to hitch my wagon to it. No, I would. I mean, look, there's some teams that are having problems running out of 11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you don't have a decent blocking tight end, it's hard to run out of 11 personnel.
Yeah. Well, I think Jesse's a decent blocking tight end.
I think that's the point I'm trying to make here. You're not. I don't think you're bringing him in to try to get him to catch 60 balls. 60, 65 balls. Maybe you are.
But like I said, traditional offenses like Jacksonville and Buffalo, I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, but I don't think I'd want to pay him that. I think Jesse's looking for and thinks he can get $4 to $5 million, which is probably fair when you look at the list of tight ends and where he would rank when he gets that. I'm not convinced the Steelers want to pay him $4 or $5 million, though. They probably want to pay him about half of that. Because look at the snaps that he plays. I mean, he plays a little bit over half the snaps. Obviously plays some on special teams. He's not a game-changing tight end. He's nice. He's a nice complementary tight end. He's exactly what Kevin Colbert called him. And to me, those kind of guys don't need to make $4, $5, $6 million.
Agreed and understood, but the reality is if a team wants to make him a number one, they're going to obviously pay him more. And that does worry me that some team's going to see him as a number one and pay him that $5 million deal, and that's something Pittsburgh probably can't compete with. Pittsburgh probably wants to do kind of that Ramon Foster 3 years, $9 million kind of contract. So could Jesse go? Yes, and that would be a hole for this team.
I think I'm more resigned to the fact of that happening this week after taking a closer look at it than I was prior to this week. And to hear Kevin Colbert talk, I'm more resigned to the fact that they might lose. Look, I mean, they usually lose a free agent or two every offseason anyway, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I feel like that he's going to at least – he's not going to re-sign before the start of the new league year. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Are you?
Yeah, well, I don't like talking absolutes, but that's
where I said confident. I didn't say absolute.
That's where my bet would be.
Okay, mine too. Yeah.
Now the thing with Foster is, I don't think he wants to go. I mean, are you really?
But he wants to get paid. He wants to get paid.
Right, but I mean, how much? What's the difference going to be? For what I think his best offer is sitting out there on the table for him right now. I think Jesse's best offer is sitting out there on the Steelers table right now, taped to the door or whatever. Just whether or not they want to sign it before they run off to check their value. And look, I don't think I'll be surprised if any of these three at this point test free agency. But at some point you have to pull those. At some point you have to accept. In other words, you have to address your needs too.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't leave those things hanging out on the front door to be signed, 4 weeks into free agency. You're going to have to make a decision of what best serves your roster as well too. So I don't know how long I keep those kind of contracts hanging out there for these guys, unless they're minimum deals, obviously, which I don't think they are in these cases here. I guess at this point I like the chances of Foster and Sensabaugh re-signing more than I do Jesse James.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Now, if you had your choice between Jesse James or Ramon Foster, you can only pick one in this hypothetical. Who are you retaining?
That's easy. I'm retaining Ramon Foster.
Okay, I figured it was, but yeah, I didn't know if age or role or because I mean, the thing with Jesse is he's been so dependable. He's been so durable. Again, the guy's missed two practices in his entire career. Camp, preseason, regular season, postseason, and with Vance McDonald, the injury concern is always there. Like, you really have to make sure you have a good number two, because there's a solid chance, a puncher's chance, he's going to become your number one at some point during the year.
But I like don't get me wrong, I like Jesse, and I have the whole time. But we're not talking about a Matt Spaeth blocker here.
No, I understand.
And
but
we're not talking about a Heath Miller production as a receiver either.
Well, how do you replace Jesse then? What is your approach? If we assume, and we'll see, but let's assume Jesse's gone.
You're falling into my trap, aren't you?
Oh man,
Hit me with it. You just fell right into my trap. Look, I know you're not big on this, and I know this is the portion where I turn the this is the heel turn part of the podcast. This is where I turn the several of the listeners of the Terrible Podcast against you. I mean, look, we've had a few emails recently about the kid out of Iowa, right?
T.J. Hawkinson,
right? Yeah. If I think we've sort of kind of been under the assumption that Jesse would be back up until this week.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say that I've kind of been leaning that way. I think my eyes got open a little bit this week, thinking that he might not be back. And if he's not back, I mean, Xavier Grimble is what he is. I mean,
yeah. Forget about him.
Forget about that. The Christian Scotland Williams, he is what he is. Bucky Hodges is what he is. You go down the list of the Radar, the kid that they just signed this off season here to futures or whatnot. I mean, it's Vance McDonald and that's it, right?
Yeah, but well, first of all, I think it's less me falling into the trap as me being a very good host and just setting you up.
I'm giving you a hard time here.
No, I know. Well, are you being serious about the Hawkinson thing?
Here's where I was going with this.
Okay.
I think you have to give it credence that it could be the best available pick that could fit a need at 20 overall.
Yes, I agree.
I think you have to discount it less.
I don't know. I mean, I like Jesse a lot, but I don't know how much it's going to dramatically change your plans to lose your number 2 tight end, that it's going to dramatically change your first round approach.
But what heading into last year's off-season training camp, what were we calling McDonald?
I don't know what. Can you stay healthy, McDonald? Yeah, stay healthy. Yeah.
I mean,
no, I get, and I just made that point. I get that, but do you take a first round pick and a rookie tight end? Rookie tight ends tend to struggle, and you're a base 11 personnel team. You got to replace AB with a receiver, so you got to draft a receiver early too. I don't know if you're putting that big investment just because you lose Jesse James.
I think you could. And I think you could. I think you could justify it. I don't think you should discount it. Look, as much as we think Kevin Colbert should go a different direction every year, look, it's got to be this pick, or this pick right here. As far as position goes, we know he's said it and tried to justify it before. You don't pass on good players because it'll come back to haunt you later.
No, I agree, and I'm not discounting it entirely. I've said that in comments and mailbags and on Twitter that yes, it's possible things have to break just right. And you know me, I don't go into the disposition only. I think you got to look at it pretty broadly, but I just don't know if that's the right approach, because the path of how it's going to work and how it's going to make your team better, is difficult. Here's my suggestion, and I'm gonna have my
If you think he's as well rounded, and if you think he's as well rounded as his tape seems to be, and I obviously I've got to watch a little bit more on him, all right, especially from a blocking standpoint. If he is the number one tight end in this year's class, and he is all that, especially from a blocking standpoint, you can justify getting him in there and him getting at least those snaps that Jesse was playing as a number two. And then you can maybe, as the season goes on, get a little bit creative with him too, as far as flexing him out and doing a few things with him and McDonald. I think he's going to be a better pass catcher for sure than Jesse is or was. And I think he's got a chance of maybe being as good, if not better, of a blocker in the limited tape that I've seen on him too. So I think it's easier to justify that kid because you could get him on the field right away, more so than maybe some of these defensive players we got our eyes on.
I'm not so sure about that, but let me throw this at you then. I mean, you draft Hawkinson at 20, and again, if the talent's there. You can't ever fight the argument of the talent is right. I'm not trying to do that, but you draft Hawkinson at 20. You're still drafting a receiver high, right? Let's assume AB's gone. He's been traded for a second-round pick. You got to draft a receiver high, correct?
First 3 or 4 rounds, yeah.
I don't know about fourth round. I think you got to go higher.
I don't know. I think this draft's a little bit deeper.
I mean, it's a deep draft, but fourth round receiver to replace AB. Not really
look, are we assuming that we're getting a pick from AB somewhere in the first 3 rounds here?
Yeah, let's assume it's not a first. Let's assume it's a second or a third.
All right. Well, I mean, you could use one of those, a second or a third on a receiver.
Yeah, no, you could, and you would and you should. But I'm just saying, you've now gone 2 of your first 3 picks, potentially offense. When are you going to fix that defense? Where's your draft capital in that defense?
Well, then it would have to be the second, and then the other third. Let's assume that the pick for let's assume the pick for AB is a second.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then you could theoretically probably use your 2 seconds on defensive players. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and obviously another defensive player, maybe an edge or something like that, and then just a wide receiver position in the 3rd or 4th round. I think after this week and you watch more tape, I think you're going to have a little bit better feeling about the draft, the depth of the wide receiver group than what you do right now.
No, I think it is a deep wide receiver group. I think it's not a top-heavy group. It's a well-rounded, deep group with a lot of different body types, and there's a lot of talent there in the mid-rounds I would like. But I'm just trying to do the exercise of just make sure you're addressing those defensive needs.
Sure, and I think they should, but like it or not, if you lose Jesse, you're going to have a little bit of a need there.
Oh yeah, no, I will champion that more than anybody about the need and the value that Jesse James has brought. I really warmed up to Jesse and his play and his value this year, and ideally, if you do that situation where you get Hawkinson and you take a receiver early, you've also made a free agent splash somewhere defensively, which helps ease some of the need at corner, inside linebacker, wherever they address it. So, I mean, there's a big picture element to look at too. But here real quick, here's my approach. And my free agency preview will come out, I think, Monday. I'll just give you one name right now. I'll just tease you with one name. If Jesse's gone, name to replace him, Jeff Hireman in Denver. Brought him in for a visit. The Ohio State kid a couple of years ago. Very similar to Jesse James. I think it's a good replacement.
Yeah, or what about my friend with the Bengals?
Use him out. CJ
out of Auburn.
Is he a free agent?
I think he is, isn't he?
I was asking you. I don't remember.
Uzama, I believe he is.
Okay.
I mean, that guy really.
Yeah, that would make sense.
He was.
Did they bring him in? Was he a visit?
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, and he was in one of my mocks. I think he might have even been in my last mock or whatnot as well too.
He's a free agent. I think.
Yep. I think he is. He was drafted 5th round 2015.
Yep, he's a free agent. That would make sense.
So I mean that or your kid, Hireman, would be an option. But look, I mean, you're not even if you sign those two, you're not going to spend a lot on them.
Well, that's my point. Instead of spending the 1st round pick in Hawkinson, we've now got a very similar Jesse James guy for $2-3 million.
Sure, but look, we know how we don't like it, but you know what Colbert does. he fills these things with bit pieces, so it keeps his cards options all open. So it's not going to be it probably wouldn't be surprising if they lost Jesse for them to go out and get an Uzama or one of these cheaper bottom end tight ends that if they can upgrade the position in the draft, they would, and then that free agent ad becomes the number 3 at the position. We see this time and time again. With Kevin Colbert never, or at least he tries not to back himself into a hole where it becomes an obvious position of need, right? I mean,
Sure.
He's done that time and time again, and really we'll cover a quote here in a little bit about what he said, about free agency plans and all like that. I'm sure have people throwing their phones up against the wall, but that are listening to this. But I mean, I could see what you're throwing out there. I mean, if it's not Jesse, then at least go get somebody that can be a complimentary tight end and block for you.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying. Yeah, I'm not again, just because you get a Hireman or whatever, you could still do a tight end. I don't disagree with that. I think there's obvious need in replacing Jesse. I just like the approach of finding another Jesse James instead of finding the next number 1. But
sure,
I get
but you get where I'm going at, right? Though Phil,
oh yeah,
try to replace the player with a equal or tad bit lesser value via free agency, and then. Hey, if that Hawkinson's kid's there in 20th overall, hey, great.
Yeah. Understood.
Now here's the thing though. I don't know where you're at on these inside linebackers right now, but I'm pretty sure you're Devin White and then the next whoever.
Yeah, it's White, then probably going to be Devin Bush.
All right. Well, I think people, and I've said this for a little while now. I think the tape is finally catching up with Mack Wilson with the stats, and I think there was a report this past week or a week and a half ago, Nick Saban pretty much saying he told that kid he needed to stay in school, and I think that's going to be the case here with Mack Wilson. Now, will he still end up going second or third round? Yeah, but I've just all along I've been concerned that he's not a first round guy. I don't think Devin Bush is a slam dunk first round guy too. And let's assume Devin White's gone. Okay. Greedy's greedy, meaning he don't like to tackle.
I think it's overstated. I think he's better than what some people say.
I don't think he's as interested as what you might think he's interested in that part of this game.
Also think I know you just need playmakers. I don't care if you tackle.
Right. We're going to get into another quote that I guess what I'm getting at here is, and look, I still have a few questions about Ja'Kai Polite. And I don't think you're maybe as high on Polite as maybe I am at this stage.
I think you've watched him more than I have. Is the reason why.
Okay, and we've gone different directions on guys before, but we've also more times than not, you and I have sort of kind of met in the middle after doing a study on the players. But it's not unusual for us to go a different way on a guy. But I guess what I'm getting at is at 20 overall. I mean. If you think White might be gone, is it DeAndre Baker? Is it Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, or is it the TJ out of Iowa? Or, you start really trimming your choices down then.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about guys that don't want to tackle. I mean, DeAndre Baker is the poster child for that, and you already hate his age, so you're not going to be a fan of DeAndre Baker. But I still like him. Yeah, you got Byron Murphy. Gardner Johnson. I can see Gardner Johnson as vaulting into the first round with a really good combine workout. Jonathan Abraham, Taylor Rapp, probably too rich for the first round. But yeah, I mean, there's no clear guy yet, and obviously, expecting that to happen because we're in the first day of March and we got a ways to go.
Right. I mean, we're just getting to the point now where we know these guys' names, and we know obviously a little bit more than that. We'll know a lot more about these guys after the combine gets done this next week and all. But I guess kind of can fast forward now into a few other things that Kevin Colbert said. Not overly shocking, but worth writing about and all like that. I guess the first thing is Colbert saying he places high value this offseason on takeaway capable college players. I guess ball awareness became takeaway capable because they don't know what ball awareness evidently is at this point. And he told in kind of the more private media scrum. I almost said scum, and I guess that would have been the correct
Hey.
classification anyway. He says, look, we sacked the quarterback at a very good rate, but our takeaways are not very good at all. You think, Kevin? Captain
Yeah.
Obvious there, according to Bob Labriolo of Steelers.com. It's really reflective on the players we have back there. Whoa, what a truth. He's spitting. He's got the lasso of truth on it. What we want to look at, what we want to value looking forward is let's value the takeaway capable guys who have shown they've been able to do that in college. Our game has always been about getting physical players who can come off the edge, close off the edge, and make a tackle. But are they doing that at the expense of not making plays on the football? Question mark. Yes. We have to maybe try to find that balance and maybe be more open to the concept that the game is constantly changing. If you want playmakers in the back end, then find someone who has done it. Well, there's only two ways, I think, to find somebody who's done it.
Are you asking me?
Free agency and a draft, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, those are your choices. I don't know about the third, unless there's a trade, but good luck with that.
Right, trade. Good luck with that. Who knows? I mean, but unlikely.
I just think the point is, you're always playing this game of projection versus production. A guy that didn't have the stats in college, but the traits, do you project him to be able to turn that corner? Or do you go with a guy that showed he was capable of it in college and you hope and assume that he can do the same in the NFL? I mean, much as we talk about the players themselves, coaches and scouts really value and love production. Randy Fichtner talked about it last year with Jalen Samuels. Said one of the big things I liked about Jalen Samuels was he was the guy that found the end zone, just the guy that scored a ton of touchdowns for NC State. So you knew when you drafted him, he was just somebody that got in the end zone. Same applies for interceptions. A guy that can pick off passes in college can do it in the NFL. A guy that didn't do it in college might not do it in the NFL. Now, that's not always true, obviously, but it may change where the Steelers have been very projection-based the last couple of years. Maybe they go with more production-based this year.
How about what happens on the tape? Let's try that.
Well, that's the debate, yeah. But if you didn't do it in tape in college, do you think you can make it work in the NFL? That's what the question Colbert's posing.
Well, you remember a couple of years ago they tried to draft a couple of defensive backs because of what the stat sheet said.
I know, Golson and Holloman, and Golson, you can't criticize him too much for that.
I mean, look, we never even got to see him.
And Holloman was a terrible pick, but he was a 7th-round pick. I mean, you're not hanging your hat on him.
Someone didn't watch the tape on Holloman.
But that's the debate, because they've tried production, they've tried projection, they've kind of still kept on missing. So it's a tough spot they're in.
And then he was quick to, Kevin Colbert was quick to draw the comparison to Artie Burns. But even so, if you watch the damn tape, I think somebody dropped the ball there because look, he obviously earned his turnovers. I thought, or at least half of them at Miami. But still, there was the red flags with the playing time and all like that there with him. And even so, he didn't have a huge amount of turnovers in the amount of he registered 7 total interceptions during his college career, and wasn't that over the course of the 3 seasons?
Well, remember, he wasn't playing consistent snaps either.
Yeah, that's true. But he's
only. I think Colbert said he was like 2nd in college football with the 5 he had his junior year, I believe it was.
I think it was the year before that, wasn't it?
Year before? I don't.
But anyway, obviously that hasn't translated, and I mean we are one off season away from maybe Artie Burns being out the door.
Yeah.
And look, there's been studies done that say just because a player gets interceptions in college doesn't mean it's going to, in other words, it's not a predictive thing.
Sure.
But if you have athletes that have shown that can continuously make plays on the ball, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a kid that had, 10 interceptions, however they may have come, tipped or whatever in college, along with, say 6 or 7 pass breakups, or maybe a kid that had 2 interceptions and 27 pass breakups?
Yeah, I mean that's the big question is the quality of it, the skills that translate, the skills that won't translate, and that's the impossible debate that's going to keep going on and on. What two
That,
names I'll give you? Go ahead.
that's why I enjoy doing these contextualizations to
Yeah.
start off my study on these guys. I want to see how they made the play. I mean, did he get an interception because the quarterback just lobbed it up in the air
Hmm.
off of one leg, a very ill-advised throw? When we saw Gerard Holliman, a lot of Gerard Holliman, bless his heart, a lot of his interceptions came him just being in the right, magically in the right place at the right time. He didn't earn, in my opinion, he didn't earn a lot of those. And it's too bad I wasn't doing contextualizations. All I would do back then is actually go back and watch every play. I just wouldn't write them up and things like that. But you see what I'm getting at is the contextualizations, at least when it comes to the entire numbers that show up on the stat sheet, it shows you how that play happened. I mean, we've seen instances in the past where a player may have had 5 interceptions during the season, and 4 of them came off of tip balls from somebody else. Can you really credit a kid for an interception on that? You know,
It's no different than a quality sack. We need to have quality interceptions.
Exactly. There you go. In fact, in the advanced stage that we live in now, you ought to be able to look at a stat sheet when it comes to certain things like that and know the quality before even having to go to the tape. But
Yeah.
that's for a different day. But that's where the whole quality sack thing has come from.
Hmm.
Quality pressures and things like that. I think a full quality pressure should be the equivalent of a half a sack.
Well, let me get out my abacus here and
Right, we're
convert this.
getting deep into the Dave algebra here, but that's a scary thought. But I mean, and I know you understand what I'm saying here, but I think you got to spend a little bit more on the tape, and and the answer to my own question was, yeah, I'd much rather have the kid that had 26 or 27 pass breakups, assuming they were all kind of legitimate things there, because I think the interceptions, if the guy's in the right place and understands what he's doing and is playing with inside the defense like he's supposed to, and he has the athletic ability, the other stuff should happen.
Yeah, let me give you two names that I'm really interested to when they run on Monday and they go through drills. The DBs that have had college production that have picked off passes, and I'll have to study the quality of it more closely in this process. But kind of an early round guy and a later round guy. But the early round guy, Amani Hooker from Iowa, played some safety. I think most scouts see him as a nickel corner, but a bigger guy at around 6 foot 210. I think that's what he's listed at. That I think kind of fits that new age 50B the Steelers might want to use with a guy that can play the run and go against some of these bigger slot receivers that are becoming in vogue in the NFL. So I think Amani Hooker, Iowa Power 5 guy, four interceptions.
Can he be that that dime guy or no?
Maybe. I mean, I think it was Daniel that did the report on him. I'll have to go back and check that out. But a guy that picked off 4 passes this past year for Iowa as a junior, has 6 in his career with I think limited starting time. So that's interesting. And then Juan Thornhill from Virginia, which had a boatload of interceptions, kind of Holloman like in terms of the number. I think he's a more physical player, and I think I'll like him more than Holloman. But 13 interception in his career, 6 this past year for the Cavs as a senior, 4 as a junior, 3 as a sophomore. So that's a guy that found the football. So I really think that some of these DBs the Steelers draft will have interceptions in their resume. They won't be 0, 1 interception kind of guys. So I think Hooker maybe day 2, round 2, and then Thornhill somewhere on day 3 are some names I want to keep an eye on.
Well, you remember back after that draft with Golson and Holloman. I remember Kevin Colbert specifically referring back to, we said we wanted guys that made plays and
Yep.
that, and specifically when he was talking about Golson, because I remember him saying SEC leader in interceptions last year and this, that, and the other. So I could definitely see Kevin Colbert quoting a stat sheet when it comes to playmakers and referencing back. I told you we were going to get some playmakers here. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think when we're going back through, and here's the other thing. We know generally Power 5, especially at the top of the board there. And we
Yep.
know generally, unless it's an underclassman, it's probably going to be an all-star kid.
I do wonder though, because there is one safety, and I know safety might not be the number one need, but that Nasir Adderley kid from Delaware, he's got great ball skills, and he played well at the Senior Bowl, but he is an FCS prospect, and we don't see this team do that early, and he's going to be gone first 50 picks. So I wonder how they're going to evaluate Adderley, if we'll ever get some interest there, and if they go visit him, or how they handle that.
When's the last non-FBS?
Power Five.
No, not necessarily Power Five, but main college conference. When's the last time we've had a player not taken? I mean, not in the main What was it, SCS? Or
I don't
FBS?
know. You're confused. FBS is Division One. It's the Power Five.
Okay,
FCS is
FBS. When's the
Division 1
last
AA.
time that we've seen the Steelers take a player in the first 2 rounds, not from the FBS?
2004, Coakley, and Ben in round. Well, Ben was FBS. Coakley was D2.
Okay.
It's been, and not only has it been FBS guys in the first 2 rounds since 2004, it's been Power 5 guys every single pick, first and second round, since 04 when it was Ben and Coakley.
It's been that long for Power 5 too.
Been that long. I know. I think Coakley scared them off, and they said no more small kids early. We can't trust them. Hargrave was third. You got some third round examples in there: Citadel, Cortez Allen, and Hargrave, South Carolina State. But first 2 rounds are Power 5.
Even Cortez, I mean, looked better. Initially with Cortez, that thing took a turn for the worse too.
Yep.
And look, this team does not do good evaluating. I mean, they can evaluate wide receivers, but they are not good on cornerbacks. And maybe bringing in what's his name, Terrell Austin, well, maybe that'll help a little bit. But I think they really rely on their scouts for a lot of this, and they can't continue to get it wrong. They're going to have to hit on one of these cornerbacks here pretty soon.
They are as bad evaluating DBs as they are good evaluating wide receivers.
All right, so are they going to sign a cornerback, and is it going to be a spot? I guess you got anything else to kind of wrap up? And I like how we transitioned that and made that a topic, but I mean, is there anything left to it?
No. What were you going to ask?
I was going to go the next point with Colbert talking about sort of talking about free agent plans this offseason. I'm going to read you a quote. He was on, the good thing is if they're asked the right questions, sometimes you can get some pretty decent answers on some of these. I'm trying to look and find out real quick. He was on Steelers Nation Radio, and he was asked, let's see. If he feels the team needs a difference maker or starter to come in, especially on the defensive side of football, when whether that comes via the draft or free agency. And Kevin Colbert says, we never look to make a splash. We've got to make the right decisions that brings the players in that might create that, but that's never the thought. Who's the best player that can help us in a situation? I know this kind of sounds canned, but and it is. But who's the best player? But who's the player that can help us in this situation, regardless of the position? And we know where we'd like to increase our competition, increase our depth, maybe change some starters in the process. So, free agency, potential trades, the draft. This is what we're doing. This is what will happen over the next 2 months. And if we're sitting here next year, we would have answered that question. You know what I mean? Like, did you do it? Well, I don't know. Where are we? So, with all
that's a very cliched answer.
Sure. I mean, not a lot of meat on the bone, but I mean, if they go out and spend a lot of money on a corner, you probably don't need to draft one that early in the draft, right?
Sure. I mean, that's logical and expected. Yeah. And hopefully they can get a corner. You got to find the right guy. I think there's a couple names out there. We'll talk about more of that after my free agency post on Monday. I've looked at a ton of these guys. I think there's probably more corners that I like than inside linebackers there in terms of free agents and probably the draft class as well. But you have to balance, what's the draft class like? Should we go free agency for this group because the draft class isn't as strong? So, there's a lot of questions that get involved here.
Right. It's going to be interesting. Look, we already talked about maybe having to add a tight end during free agency here, lower end one here, depending on what happens with Jesse James. You would think maybe a corner, but how big a name? How much money are you going to spend on that? You wouldn't really expect them to rush out and spend a lot of money on a safety, right?
Probably not. I mean, it could be the dime guy. I mean, it depends how you define the safety, though.
Right. I mean, in other words, honey badger or bust, right?
I got a couple other names I think that
Okay.
might take your interest here, but it's not going to be like a strong safety free. It might be free safety, but it's
Right.
not going to be like Terrell Edmonds'
You're looking
job.
for a versatile guy, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right. So maybe you get that. I mean, are you going to get yourself a linebacker? To help compete. I mean, do you remember a year ago we were being force fed Tyler Matakevich? Do you realize that? We never
Started
believed
training
it.
camp with that. Yeah, started training camp with
No,
it.
it actually started.
Well, no, I'm saying that that's how far it got. Yeah, the
Right.
conversation. Colbert said, remember, don't forget about Tyler Matakevich, and then promptly forgot about Tyler Matakevich when the game started counting.
Right, and that just goes to show you what a bunch of load of BS sometimes. Because I mean, never for a moment did you believe Tyler Matic did. And obviously this is before John Bostic was even signed. Never did you believe Tyler Matakevich was going to be the starter, did you? I don't think you did.
No, I think it was just doing the right thing for a player that's worked really hard. It was
Right,
being nice.
but
It was being. No, I agree. Yeah, Tyler Matakevich was never going to start at day one. Yeah,
it
I agree.
smelled like doo-doo the whole time.
Yeah, I mean it was Colbert giving a Colbert answer.
I mean, I don't think he's come close to that this year, right?
But he's only been asked about Antonio Brown, so he's had the chance to talk about somebody else. No, I don't think he's talked about it. I wish someone asked about Cam Sutton. I want to know what he thinks about Cam Sutton.
And here's the thing: if you or Matthew or Josh, if I sent any of you guys would ask that question. I don't think he's been asked. It's all been AB, and the thing is people ask him about AB. Someone will turn around and have a next interview with him. Will ask him the same damn question. Now, what good is that?
Yeah, I thought Missy Matthews had a nice interview with him.
I did too. I think she's the only one that asked stuff off the radar. She asked about what she the one that asked
Faulkner and Austin.
Right, and did she ask about the quarterbacks or no? Who was that?
No, I think that was SNR.
Yeah, that was no. Well, and
Sirius, one of the two
asked about that as well too. But yeah, I mean, once he answers, there's no sense to ask. I know it's a main talking point. Everybody on their news show wants the same thing. Wants to hear, well, what did he have to say about AB? But I mean, if they're tuning into just the news to to get their Steeler news. Oh, Lord help them. But, the whole, I tell you another interesting thing he had to say, too, that I'm try to write this up tonight, maybe if I have time, is what he said about AB. He was during his interview with Mike Florio talking about, or not AB, Le'Veon Bell, the failed negotiation with him. Florio asked him if it was going to change his way of how they put contracts together, because typically it's the Steelers and the Packers and the Bengals that don't generally, unless it's a quarterback, don't like dealing with a lot of that fully guaranteed money, especially in past year one. And Colbert, in so many words, said, "No, what we do works right now." And I'll write up the rest. I don't want to spoil it and tease, throw the whole quote out there. But I thought it was a good question and answer when it came to that topic as well too. And Kevin Colbert was asked about Mason Rudolph. And I think some other point, maybe it was during the regular press conference, he was asked about the competition between Dobbs and Rudolph, and you wrote that up. But he was asked specifically about Rudolph during his interview on Sirius XM radio, and Colbert says Mason was going through the process of being a rookie, and most often he ran the scout team. Talking about last year, Colbert said, but he was awesome in running our scout team. At least we got that going for us. His preparation, he's usually one of the first on the practice squad. I mean, first on the practice field, and he takes pride in running the other team's offense, and he'll work on the cadence, the mannerisms, some of the throws. He really progressed. So Kevin Colbert went on to kind of add that looks forward to that competition next year during training camp between Joshua Dobbs and Mason Rudolph, which he should, and we all hope and think and pray that Mason Rudolph's going to be the one to come out of that with that job.
Yeah, like I said, it'll be competition. It won't be handed to Rudolph. He'll have to earn it the way that Dobbs earned his roster spot in the backup job, beating out Landry Jones in 2018. But obviously the best case scenario for the long-term health of the team is that Rudolph takes that spot.
All right, what else we got that Colbert said?
The last thing I had was, and this is just kind of a procedural thing, I guess, is that Ryan Shazier's status still up in the air. Colbert did confirm that he's not going to play in 2019. I get the feeling that a target date will be 2020, so next year for Shazier to try to come back. But Colbert remained optimistic and said they're going to support Shazier as they should. And the contract situation still seems kind of weird. We had Joel Corey tell us it was going to toll by the letter of the CBA. It sounds like it should toll, but either way, I mean, Shazier was going to be a Steeler in 2019. It's just unclear exactly how that's going to work in a procedure standpoint.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go by what the CBA says, I know I know there's a lot of uncertainty now, but I mean, judging by everything I know and read, and really with Eli Rogers too. Now they can choose to, like I wrote up in the article. We saw Sheed with the Seahawks go through exactly the same thing that Eli did a couple of years ago, and the Seahawks just did him the courtesy and just went ahead and cut him, and to let him test the market as the right thing to do. Now. The Steelers will have the right to do the same thing, but because he missed, unless he was deemed fully healthy to play by that 6th week, talking about Eli Rogers, then even though he got on the field later on in the season, he's still deemed qualified to have that contract toll. So, I mean, we're going to know within a couple of weeks which one it is. If Shazier and Rogers' contract don't toll, then that, of course, means they're unrestricted free agents at that point. So you would have to re-sign them. Now, obviously, you're not going to have competition to re-sign Ryan Shazier. You just sign him to a minimum salary benefit deal, and then place him on PUP, reserve PUP, just like you did last year. So we're gonna learn the answer to this real quick. But everything I've been told from Joel Corey on to the CBA says that both those players should have their contracts told.
And Ed Bouchette said it would toll too. So it's conflicting reports out there. My question with Shazier is, and again, this gets into the boring logistics, but like when a player signs a contract, he has to be able to pass a physical. Can Shazier pass a physical by NFL standards if he has to sign a new deal? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of that. That's a good question. Maybe Joel Corey can answer that, but
yeah. We'll just let it play out. I mean, Shazier is going to be a Steeler in 2019. They just got
it sounds like it. They just don't look. I mean, I wouldn't surprise me, and maybe Colbert just don't know the exact rules of the toll and and all like that. But we'll see. We'll have our answer. We should have our answer in about 2.5 weeks.
Yep, when free agency opens up, we'll know. So that's all I had on Colbert. I don't know if you had anything else on Colbert, but we've been almost an hour and a half here. So
haven't really. Time flies when you're having when you're having fun there. I think it's some good dialogue today.
Oh yeah.
Let's see if we got some. Eric Coakley writes in, if Brown is gone and the cap space is used primarily to upgrade the defense, do you see the defense being the stronger of the two next season? I know there are so many variables play out. Is the loss of AB and the gain possible with the cap space possible to swing it that much? Look, if you keep AB or you trade AB before having to pay this $2.5 million roster bonus, you're only saving $1 million in cap space this year, and by the time, you might as well just call it a wash by the time whatever happens there. So don't look at this from a cap space perspective with AB. Just look at it that you're losing a damn good offensive player. I've said all along, the only way this team's going to be able to compete, period, is if the defense gets better. I mean, you cannot continue to have a defense blow leads and not get the turner, not do their part for the offense, the way that's happened the last couple of years. The sacks just aren't simply enough, and I think Kevin Colbert's coming to that realization as well too. They've had over 100 sacks these last couple of years, but what has that gotten them? Yep. You need to take. I'd much rather have an increase in takeaways and a decrease in sacks and a decrease in Ben Roethlisberger passing yardage and a decrease in Ben Roethlisberger interceptions. If you do all that, and so I guess what the question is: do we see defense being stronger of the two units next season? Probably not, but I sure hope the defense is better.
No, I think it'll be true. The defense could improve, but the offense will still be driving this bus.
To some degree. But I mean, look, and we've said it time and time again. You have to have a good defense, and you have to have a defense that can win you a game or two in the playoffs. Period.
Yep, it's got to get better.
Jason Campbell writes in, "Hello, boys." Calling us boys. I ain't no boy. I'm 50. I'm a man. Alex is a boy.
Yeah, I'm a small child. I'm 14.
In my opinion, for whatever it's worth, the whole AB situation comes down to two things. He wants a new contract, and he's actually jealous of Juju. The whole Ben is awful was just an attempt to get cut. It obviously failed, and now it is what it is. What do you guys think? I mean, I think he could have. I think this is some money related, and I think the diva switch in him flipped. He's just reading too much of his press. Maybe the Juju thing played a part of it, but this is something I think that's probably started brewing from that Denver game on, and just the guys. Plus he wants more money too. So whenever you have all that involved, I think you have what we have here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know everything that happened internally, but externally, like the only controversy with AB and Ben was the Denver thing. I thought Ben was wrong to say. I thought it was a dumb thing to say, but like, is that one comment really going to set you off? I mean, I guess that was maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, but what a bizarre situation.
What we have here is failure to communicate.
Oh, I know that reference.
No,
what movie is it?
Hopefully you've seen the movie. It's one of the greatest movies of all
time. I know. It's it's the most famous lines of all time. Right. Why can't I? Because we're doing this podcast at night. No, it's much.
Paul Newman was in the movie.
Well, yeah, that's gonna help me. Oh, Paul Newman. Well, why didn't you say something? I'm gonna get yelled at by everybody. I can't. I as soon as you say it, I'm gonna know it.
Cool Hand Luke.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah.
Have you ever seen Cool Hand Luke?
Man,
if you put them video games down, kid, start watching some of these classics. You gotta watch Cool Hand Luke. It was just on the other night. The wife and I were laying in bed watching it again. It's one of those movies you just when it's on you can't turn it off. You gotta watch. Great movie that is. Josh writes in. Hey guys, been listening the last couple years. First time emailer. All right,
hey.
Got a first time emailer here from Josh. Name's Josh. He's from Erie, PA. Is that close to you, Alex?
A couple hours north.
All right. So with the combine in full swing, basically on NFL.com, they have a new app that shows the best combine performers over the last 10 years or so, and you can sort by position and drill. I noticed that nearly all Steelers wide receivers they draft finish very well in the 20-yard and 60-yard shuttle, but not always great in their 40 time. My question is, do you believe the Steelers value these drills more than the 40 time? What do these drills show about the player? And can this be used to a slight indication on who they might target at wide receiver in the draft, since the drafted wide receiver finished in the top 15 of those specific drills? You like to do the comparisons on those, Alex. Have at it.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the article right now, kind of what they look for each year, and I have them at a sub 4.57 40 time, a sub 4.3 short shuttle, sub 7 second 3 cone. So yeah, I mean, can you use that information to give you a clue, an indication of who the team likes? Absolutely. I think it's valuable information, but not knowing exactly how the system works, it can be difficult to know exactly how much. But, as we've done for the last several years, and we'll do again this year, and factor in what James Washington did, I think he hit most of these benchmarks. The 40 time was definitely sub 4.57. It was 4.54. But, yeah, we'll throw it in there, and we'll let you know what players kind of fit.
And Lord knows, Josh, they like you. You need to get to that Spark website as well, too. SPARQ. What is it? 3 Sigma something or another. And what they usually do is they usually aggravate our data real quick that we put up on Steelers Depot, and then turn that into the Spark scores and all like that. But the Steelers love those Sparky players at the top of the draft there. And that's usually a good indication as well, too. And like Alex and I tease each other all the time with the kind of the Blues Clues thing, unless they change something this year, we expect that first-round draft pick to potentially be an underclassman, to potentially be Sparky, to potentially be have at least two years of good production. We expect Tomlin and Colbert to be at their pro day. Power 5. Did I miss anything?
Those are the big stuff.
I mean, we ought to be able to. The thing is sometimes we discount. I mean, I think if you go back and look at Terrell Edmonds, the signs were there. We just chose to ignore them again.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You got to debate the tape versus what people, other outsiders are saying. To my credit, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I had Edmonds in the second round, so I wasn't too far off.
All right. Well, but even then, I discounted it all. I discounted him altogether just because the consensus. Look, I mean, make no mistake about it. The Steelers, what's really good is you look at who's the old man just going in, drawing a blank, going in the Hall of Fame, Dallas Cowboys. I should know his name.
Gil Brandt.
Gil Brandt, yeah.
How dare you? You yell at me for Cooley and Luke.
I know. I drew a blank there. The thing with him is he every year right before the draft puts out his top 150, I think. Boy, he's good at that. And the sad thing about it is if there's one team that's usually drafting outside of the top 50 in the generally, if you look at most of, and I've done homework on this for post on Steelers Depot as well too, most of the teams in the first round draft a guy within that first top 50 that Gil has, except for the Steelers. Now, I think the last guy that they did that was in the 50 was maybe T.J. Watt. But, I mean, obviously Artie Burns was outside of that. I think last year Edmonds was outside of that as well. But, all the clues that we just said, you can whittle those down as we get through this process as well, too, and do the same thing. But that's a good question about the wide receiver measurables here. Let me take just wondering, Dave, how did you start SteelersDepot.com? Danielle Russell from Dan. Oh, this is Dan from Brisbane, Australia. Oh, I guess is what I think it originally started around 2006. I've always been kind of active on the web as far as enthralled by the web. I self-taught myself HTML code back 2000, 2001. I would always put up these. I would always do our local leagues fantasy football website way back then on AOL free sites and those kind of things like that, and got into playing around with kind of an automated I guess kind of store, if you will. And Steelers Depot originally started as kind of a merchandise where you'd make kind of a part of the sale, commission and all like that deal. And that didn't last too long. And then I just decided to start turning it into a blog because blogging got hot at the time. WordPress was in its fledgling stage at that time. And obviously having the passion for the Steelers, I was coming out of my real life and retiring at the time. On top of it, looking for something to keep my mind busy, and all those factors kind of came into play at one time, and at about 2008, and I think that's kind of when I kind of flipped the switch on it to go to a blog at that point. So I think that's about it.
Steelers could trade out of first round, April 21st, 2008, the first ever Steelers Depot article from Dave Bryan. Colbert said today the Steelers could indeed trade out of the first round on Saturday if the right deal was presented, back when the draft was the weekend event. And just for the record here, we have a link to what Colbert said. So anyone who accuses Dave of not giving credit, the very first Steelers Depot article has a Pittsburgh Live article that no longer exists. So we have outlived this Pittsburgh Live article.
Boy, the writing is only slightly improved, or has it? or has it?
It's played the fifth on that one.
Yeah.
It's a one paragraph thing. It's like 75 words. Steelers could trade out of first round, but you say I highly suspect the Steelers will stay right where they are, and I believe you were right.
How about that soft news there?
But
look, and the site's all obviously gone through various changes throughout the years and all like that. So Alex and Matthew have been with me 5+ years, I think, something like that on top of it there. So It's been a work in progress, but that's kind of how it started. And always I never thought they would get to where it is now. I'll tell you that, and I'm happy it is. I appreciate all the people listening and going to the site and all like that on top of it. So good question from down under there in Australia. From Josh Kreitzer writes in, hey guys, do you think the Steelers have their eyes on any potential cap casualties from other teams? It's hard to predict who might get cut, ain't that the truth? But this is a situation that brought us Joe Hayden, so it's fun speculation, especially with someone like Jimmy Smith in Baltimore. I was also wondering if you could give listeners a little insight into well, this is almost the same damn thing. People are thinking the same thing. A little insight into the origin story of how Steelers Depot bat signal started going up in Mom's basement and how Alex got started too. I think it'd be a perfect opportunity for Alex to tell his side of the story here. I've been a listener for a while, and while it's definitely possible I missed it or forgot it, I don't think I've heard out of sight or Alex. Well, Josh, I just told you how the SD side of things got going. Before we answer your cap casualties, Alex, why don't you kind of give how you came about?
Yeah, it was August of 2013. I was writing for another Steelers site, a buddy of mine's site, and I always did like game notes, regular season, preseason, and I used to just do it for my own nerdiness and benefit. And I found this website my buddy had started to do it for them, and I think you had found my article on the Giants game, preseason game, I think with Tree Archer's first game, maybe a year before that, I don't quite remember. But yeah, just breaking down the Giants game, and you messaged me about it and just said, hey, you want a job? And I was like, yeah. And I think you hired me like 3 hours after that first message, and I guess the rest is history.
Yeah, you were still, obviously, you had, 2 years of college left at the time?
Yeah, that was the summer right before my junior year, I think.
How old were you at the time, 20?
I would have been, right around 2013, whenever, 20 years old.
So what are you now, 25?
25, 26 in May.
Good
so yeah,
Lord.
been a good run.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah, it does. So that's how Alex came about, and kind of Matthew's story was similar to that. Matthew was writing on a kind of a very generic site, and read his stuff for a while and was really impressed with it, and brought Matthew in. I think a year before. Matthew was already.
It was a couple months before.
Was it a couple months before you?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe it was a full year, but Matthew's been with me ever since, and really we there's no doubt about it. Alex and I consider really Matthew kind of the backbone of what we do, and we kind of just work around what Matthew does. He's so good at what he does. On top of it. So yeah, that's it's weird that both those questions fall right in line there in the email, but that gives you a little insight into Alex and I there. And what do you think about, as far as the cap casualties go, Josh? And you mentioned Jimmy Smith and all. I just keep going back to that whole 30 years or older defensive side of football, outside free agents that I write and talk about all the time. If the Steelers do sign an outside free agent that plays on the defensive side of football and is 30 years of age or older, it's not going to be for a lot of money. And they just generally don't go, forever. They don't go that direction there with outside free agents on defensive side of the ball who are 30 or over. Now, could a situation crop up? I think it would have to crop up similar to Joe Hayden. In other words, kind of after the fact, and it'd have to be a player that they really, really have had their eyes on, because other than that, anybody else that's a cap casualty will be right in with the lump of the rest of the free agents in 2 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't predict cap casualties. As they come in, we'll look at them, and if someone makes sense, we'll definitely write about it. Like you wrote about D'Angelo Williams years ago.
Right, and that to me that was kind of an easy one to see coming. You knew he was going to be a post. They were going to officially cut him right after the start of the new league year. You started putting the pieces together, the Blues Clues, if you will, to Randy Fichtner from Memphis, what the Steelers were looking for running back. I was pretty proud of myself on that one because and look, he was over 30 at the time too, right? But he was offense, and the Steelers kind of treat the over 30 offensive outside free agents a little bit different than they do the defensive side of football there.
Yeah, what Lance Moore and Ernest Battle, I think, were two other 30-plus offensive guys.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, we'll look. I mean, and there's going to be people we've even heard at the combine. Texas want to re-sign Tyrann Mathieu. Who's the kid in Tampa Bay, the linebacker?
Quan Alexander.
Yeah, it looks like they might try to do something with him. Obviously, in Baltimore, we don't expect Mosley to hit free agency either there. So somebody, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with a guy like Denard. Things like that. So some of these guys that a lot of people are hoping might hit free agency might not.
Yeah.
All right, we spent some time on this one here, Alex. So
Yes,
I think we should start wrapping up here. Thanks for listening. Follow all of our coverage on SteelersDepot.com of the Combine and all. Alex and I will be back with you when? Tuesday, right?
Yep, Tuesday.
Tuesday at normal time there. So this, if you listen to this, it means it was recorded later Thursday night and went up Friday morning on the site. And you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to donate, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora. Always lit.